absolutely the experts should be making those decisions, but in fact, it's not clear that that's what happened in the Order in Council, where hundreds of guns that made no sense to people with a lot of experience in firearms and their use. So I think that is worthy of note. I think the other thing that's worthy of note is a lot of the handguns or things that are being discussed are already prohibited or restricted, and the government keeps pretending that they're not. That's simply not the case. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We are now ready for statements by members. Déclaration des députés, l'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke.
Madam Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken its toll on everyone. While families across the country have struggled with the COVID-19 illness itself, that's not the only fallout.
Order, I just, maybe the member, I'm not sure, there's something wrong with the screen. Now we know. So now I will ask the member to restart, and I would just ask all members as we prepare, in order to ensure that we don't waste any time and that there's no time taken from other members, to make sure that their headphones are on, that their screens are on. Otherwise, I would have to jump to somebody else. So the honourable member for Etobicoke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The COVID-19 pandemic has taken its toll on everyone. While families across the country have struggled with the COVID-19 illness itself, that's not the only fallout from the pandemic. 40% of Canadians have experienced their mental health deteriorate over the last year. For those with pre-existing mental health conditions, the number rose to 61%. Young people have seen the greatest decline in good mental health compared to pre-pandemic levels. 7 in 10 health workers reported worsening mental health, and 64% of Indigenous people said their mental health had deteriorated. We are all feeling the pressures. On May 13th, I had my annual mental health forum, but this year we were virtual, and I recorded it for people to consult after the event. It was an incredible discussion with Dr. Kadi Kamkar from Toronto's CAMH and Deborah Quiggin from Lamp Community Health Centre, located in my constituency of Etobicoke Lakeshore. They were both very helpful with respect to COVID mental health survival tips. Madam Speaker, people need not suffer alone. There is help. Please reach out.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Madam Speaker, businesses in Mégantic-l'Érable need a real plan. The plans to hire temporary workers are delayed, and we're talking about 2 years delay. That could have consequences on all of regional development. Expansion projects are cancelled. Projects are turned down. We're talking about billions of dollars just in Mégantic-l'Érable every week. We're asking the Minister of Immigration to fix the situation and meet with all these different companies who are making the request.
Attractions, Fromagerie de la Chaudière, Équipement Lapierre, Gosselin Express, Technopain, Thiriac Peinture, CIF Métal, Optimoul, Plantation Robert, Métallurgie Castec, Plessitech, Plantation Nicolas, les 3 chambres de commerce.
The 3 chambers of commerce, the minister must ensure to put in place a system that will work and put an end to the current delays. It's high time for Ottawa to give businesses the respect that they deserve.
The honourable member for Markham-Stouffville.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This week is National Tourism Week. In my riding of Markham-Stouffville, I know that many of my constituents have made excellent use of the beautiful Rouge National Urban Park in keeping with public health guidelines to exercise, get fresh air, and maintain their mental health during this challenging time. Our national parks are extraordinary areas where we can enjoy and appreciate Canada's natural beauty. At the same time, these parks protect our environment and conserve vital ecosystems. As we recover from the pandemic, our national parks present Canadians with opportunities to explore our country's amazing natural heritage. There is still much work to be done in continuing to restore and develop the Rouge National Urban Park, and therefore there is great opportunity for jobs, economic development, and tourism. So during this National Tourism Week, let's celebrate Canada's national parks and continue our work to preserve them and see them grow.
The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
Madam Speaker, in addition to the 2-tier OAS proposal, there is yet another example in this budget of government's discrimination against groups of seniors, that is, single seniors. This government has chosen not to address a tax unfairness introduced by the Harper government. Single seniors are without an equivalent to income splitting, whereby married or common law partners may transfer pension income to the lower earner and thus pay less tax. What does that mean, Madam Speaker? By not introducing measures for those without a partner, the Liberal government will allow a single senior to pay substantially more taxes than a senior in a couple with the exact same income. By the same token, singles will continue to be blatantly disadvantaged on any tax credits and benefits that are calculated using a taxpayer's net income, such as the age amount and the old age security benefits. This is totally unfair. Governments need to put an end to this tiered seniors approach and stop discriminating against single seniors. Thank you.
The honourable member for Ottawa West, Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to bring to the attention of this House the escalating violence in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers are reportedly committing widespread human rights abuses, including targeted killing of civilians and brutal sexual violence. The conflict, which began in November, has killed thousands and displaced as many as 2 million people. It has now led to a humanitarian crisis, which is putting 5 million people at risk of famine. According to the UN, 91% of the people of Tigray are in immediate need of assistance. I ask all members of this House to join me in calling on the Ethiopian authorities to ensure an immediate ceasefire, to hold accountable those responsible for extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detention, and human rights violations, and to immediately ensure safe access to humanitarian aid, such as medicine and food supplies, to the Tigray region. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Today is the Republic Day of Azerbaijan, a day to honor the formation of the first parliamentary republic and first democratic, legal, and secular state in the Turkish and Islamic world. The republic, among other things, vowed to guarantee all of its citizens within its borders free, full political and civil rights, regardless of their ethnic origin, or religion, class, profession, or gender. Unfortunately, the republic only survived 23 months in its first iteration, as it was taken over by Bolshevik Russia and remained part of the Soviet Union for 70 years. Since its restoration, however, Azerbaijan has remained an ally to Canada through the Partnership for Peace program through NATO. Today, as chair of the Canada-Azerbaijan Friendship Group, I am joining the people of Azerbaijan, Azerbaijanis, Canadians, and people around the world in celebrating Azerbaijan Day. Happy Republic Day!
The honourable member for Scarborough North.
Madam Speaker, today I am honored to recognize Asian Heritage Month. With a rich and vibrant history, Canadians of Asian descent have made significant contributions to building this great country. My riding of Scarborough North is home to a diverse Asian population that has grown businesses and enhanced the cultural landscape of our community. This week, I was pleased to announce a federal investment of $2.8 million for the Chinese Cultural Centre of Greater Toronto on behalf of the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. The funds will help increase accessibility and build a new Asian garden, an important cultural legacy for generations to come. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the CCC has provided meals to seniors, distributed PPE, and donated to food banks while addressing the rise of anti-Asian racism. This month, let us be reminded of what connects us as Canadians: respect, freedom, and inclusion, and continue building an even better Canada. Merci.
The honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Madam Speaker, my father came from Croatia to Canada as a 7-year-old in 1929. The characteristics he gained from his upbringing ensured his success in Canada: hard work, self-reliance, and love of family. Croatia is an ancient nation, but Saturday marks the 20th anniversary of statehood, celebrating the day its first multi-party parliament passed the constitutional recognition of Croatian sovereignty and independence. In 2019, I had the honor of attending the official state visit of the Croatian president to Canada and the Prime Minister's reception for her in Hamilton. Before that, I had welcomed the Speaker of their Parliament and other members to the House. On Saturday, I'll be joining His Excellency Ambassador Vice Skracic to see the colors of the Croatian flag projected onto Niagara Falls. We all anxiously await the end of the pandemic so Canadians can discover one of the most beautiful vacation destinations in the world, our beautiful homeland, Lijepa naša domovino.
The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Madam Speaker, people in my riding of Langley Aldergrove like to celebrate Environment Week by planting trees. Now, they're just mere seedlings for now, but as they mature, they will add real beauty to our neighborhoods and contribute to the greening of the planet, and in a very modest way, the fight against global climate change. So this next week, Saturday, June 5th, in front of the Home Depot, I will be there with my friends at Langley Environmental Partners Society, and we will hand out 500 native tree seedlings. Now, admittedly, that's not as impressive as the 2 billion trees that the Liberals keep promising again, and yet recently once again. But our trees are real trees that are going to absorb real greenhouse gases. So I want to invite everybody June 5th, Saturday, in front of the Home Depot. Be there and get your own beautiful native tree seedling. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Hull-Ilmer. This morning, I would like to recognize a remarkable citizen from Gatineau, Mr. Paul Marcier. He is a star in my community, not because he takes credit for the many contributions he makes to his community, but in fact because he works far from any limelight in order to ensure that everyone can have a chance at a better life. He was born in Ottawa in 1945, and Paul quickly made his mark in the business sector in Montreal, in Quebec City, and since the 1990s in Hull and Aylmer. Now a full-time volunteer, he can be found everywhere. He is involved in the Aylmer Legion, the Knights of Columbus, but above all, responds to the call of his neighbors in need. In fact, I must tell you, Madam Speaker, that Paul considers everyone to be his neighbor, no matter where they live. Paul, thank you for everything you do for us. The community greatly appreciates you. Great success in the future.
South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The 1914 White Rock Pier landmark, the longest pier in Canada, brings locals and tourists to our coastal beauty, small businesses like Cosmos and Yuli's restaurants, and delicious ice cream sold alongside the beach promenade. In non-pandemic times, the Pier and Marine Drive host events like Picnic on the Pier, the Summer Concert Series, the Sea Festival and Semiamu Days, and Canada Day by the Bay with awesome fireworks. But in 2018, our pier was broken in half by 90-kilometer winter winds. I watched a daring helicopter rescue of a visitor stuck at the wrong end of the damage. After a silent spring and summer, the pier reopened with a $4.3 million repair funded by the city, the province, and the community, but it remains structurally fragile. Urgent reinforcement is necessary. It's a shovel-ready infrastructure project. Sincerely, the federal government needs to step up. Act now to save this West Coast icon. Thank you.
For Saskatoon West.
Madam Speaker, yesterday the Liberal NDP coalition rammed through this House the Prime Minister's billion-dollar deficit budget. This budget is a massive letdown to all Canadians who were looking to the federal government to deliver us out of the worst economic times this country has faced in a century. Instead, Canadians got costly spending piled upon costly spending. Under this Liberal NDP coalition, the Prime Minister has now racked up more debt than all previous Canadian governments combined. In my riding of Saskatoon West, constituents want to know why the NDP have supported this reckless racking up of the national credit card and mortgaged our children's future. Contrast that with the Conservative plan to secure jobs and secure our economy. Our leader has put forward a real plan that will get our economy growing again and create good-paying jobs that get Canadians back to work across the country. The people of Saskatoon West don't want a reckless Liberal NDP coalition. They want the solid Conservative plan to secure jobs and secure our future.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Ojibway Shores is a vital 33-acre green space in the last remaining undeveloped natural shoreline in Windsor, Detroit. It has hundreds of endangered species that rely upon migration through surrounding local parks for survival. This includes Ojibway, Spring Garden, Black Oak, and Tallgrass Prairie Park, to name a few. If connected, this area, including with the Detroit River, could become one of North America's best treasures. It serves not only a home for these species, but also provides flood mitigation to climate change and natural areas that our community can enjoy for the use of healthy tourism and living. Over the past several years, a consensus has developed among residents and local, national, and international organizations for all these lands to be put together into a national urban park. Tens of thousands of people have attended public meetings, signed petitions, written letters, and emails. Even the Prime Minister says he's in favor. The federal government should seize the opportunity to move on their goal of creating more urban parks, as indicated in their fall economic statement. It's time now for Ojibway National Urban Park.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, I rise today in this House devastated. My heart is shattered The discovery of small bodies of 250 Indigenous children buried behind a Kamloops residential school is horrendous. I don't understand. My sadness is without end. As a white person, I am ashamed. As a mother, I am devastated. I feel physically ill. Madam Speaker, there are times in history that are so dark, so dirty, so ugly that we have the responsibility, a sacred responsibility, to remember. Never again. These children were entitled to life. They had the right to love, to grow up. And we, the white society, gave them nothing, only negligence and abuse. It's terrible. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, and no doubt on behalf of all Quebecers, I want to offer my sincerest condolences to the Kamloops community and to all First Nations who have experienced such treatment. Our hearts go out to you.
Honourable Member. The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Madam Speaker, yesterday, Kupki Roseanne Casper of the Kamloops First Nations revealed that the remains of 250 children had been found buried on the site of the former residential school in Kamloops, BC. Today, our community mourns along those who suffered this terrible loss and alongside all survivors of the horrific residential school system who are undoubtedly forced to remember their trauma upon hearing the news. There's nothing more painful in life than losing a child. My heart breaks today thinking of all the loving parents who never saw their children return home and who were never granted the dignity of knowing what happened. This tragedy is yet another reminder of the important work done by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and how much more work true reconciliation requires. Chief Casimir and the leadership of the Kamloops community have taken on the heavy burden to caretake for these lost children. Finally, to those who love these children, know that I, the Kamloops community, and the whole of Canada mourn with you. Your loss will never be forgotten.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honour all students in my community of Vaudreuil-Soulanges. This school year, many of them began a new chapter in their schooling online, and they had to do their best to stay motivated. Many of our students are now graduating high school, college, or university alone in front of a computer screen. I want to recognize their perseverance. I want to recognize their strength because they had to face isolation and were not able to experience things they should have been able to.
Message with all of our students. Congratulations on making it through. It may not have been perfect, but nothing has been during this pandemic. Whether you just finished another year or term or are graduating, I hope you know just how strong you are for getting here. And whatever your next steps and plans are, we're behind you. Your teachers and parents are behind you, and we all look forward to seeing you reach new heights and achieve all that you hope to achieve and experience in the years ahead. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Questions orales, oral questions. L'honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
Thank you. Wednesday, I asked the Minister of Finance if she knew Canada's inflation rate. No answer. I asked if she knew the Bank of Canada's target rate. No answer. By feigning ignorance, she demonstrates that she has no idea what's going on in Canada. Everything costs more. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed yesterday that interest on this government's staggering debt will cost an additional $3.4 billion per year. Why has the minister failed to present a credible economic plan to Canadians?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to take this question. The Honourable Member doesn't tell you that his solution to the supposed inflation problem is to stop spending on supports that are helping businesses stay open and workers keep their jobs and put food on the table. The reality is the inflation target between 1% and 3% of the Bank of Canada is run independently by the Bank of Canada, and the Government of Canada is in charge for fiscal policy. We used our fiscal firepower during the greatest economic emergency we have seen to help those families and workers keep their job and keep food on the table, and I will not apologize for it.
Let's do some math. More inflation is higher prices, less money for Canadians, more inflation, higher interest rates is higher prices for all Canadians. Higher prices is less money in the pockets of all Canadian families. Why is the minister watching the train go by? The math is simple, and the minister's ignoring the warnings of the parliamentary budget officer. Why did she neglect to present a credible plan for our economy?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member is selective in his choice of sources. The reality is a number of credible experts, including former governors of the Bank of Canada, have described the fiscal framework outlined in the recent budget as being sustainable. If the member is concerned about inflation, I would point him to the fact that we've been able to lock in long-term interest rates. And if he looks at the cost of servicing our debt outlined in Budget 2021, he will see that in raw dollar terms, despite the fact that we have had to incur debt to support Canadians, the cost of servicing that debt is actually less than what was predicted in the fall economic statement before this pandemic. We will move forward.
L'honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
The cost of everything is rising, Madam Speaker. This is the reality. Yesterday, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report that confirms that we have been saying all along about this Liberal budget. There are more risk and more debt for Canadians. Revenues have been overestimated, and deficit and debt have been underestimated. And there's no plans for Liberals to ever balance a budget again. After 2 years in this making, why does this government fail to produce the credible plans for the future?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member sees the cost of the measures we put in place, but he does not see the value in them. I would point this honourable member that today is actually the day that families with kids under 6 are going to receive an enhanced Canada Child benefit after months of delay by the Conservatives. They pretend to support our measures when they oppose CERB. They vote against measures to extend the wage subsidy, and they held a press conference at the beginning of this pandemic to say that they won't support big fat government programs. Canadians should know that in their time of need, it was our government that was there for them to ensure that they could keep their job and put food on the table. That was the right approach then, and it's the right.
Facts. Inflation is on the rise, and with it, interest rates will go up sooner than expected. A rise in the interest rates will cause debt servicing costs to also skyrocket. The PBO confirmed yesterday that interest rate increases will add on average $3.4 billion in additional debt interest costs annually. That is $3 billion less for healthcare, infrastructure, or helping make small businesses more competitive. So I ask again, why has this government failed to put a credible economic plan in place?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Take no lessons, Madam Speaker, from a member of a party who had the worst economic record since the Great Depression before this pandemic. If he wants to see a credible fiscal plan, I direct him to Budget 2021. The plan is to continue to support households and businesses through this pandemic. The plan is to defeat COVID-19, and the plan is to ensure that all Canadians, not just wealthy Canadians, get to benefit from the growth that is being projected, not just by our government, but by private sector economists wherever you look, Madam Speaker. The reality is our plan maintains a AAA credit rating, our plan maintains the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and our plan supports Canadian workers.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
It was indeed a big budget, but not for the right reasons. Biggest spending, biggest deficit, and biggest debt in the history of our country. The PBO even said that inflation and rising interest rates will blunt the effectiveness of the so-called stimulus spending in the massive budget. With no fiscal anchor, no debt management strategy, and never-ending deficit, why is this government setting up the country for massive failure?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
It's clear, Madam Speaker, that the honourable member has not taken the time to read the budget. He claims there is no fiscal anchor. The fiscal anchor is actually described in those terms as a declining debt to GDP ratio. He says there's no debt management strategy when the phrase debt management strategy is actually included in the portion of the budget that seeks to explain how we plan to manage our debt. The reality is, Madam Speaker, we have launched spending measures to keep businesses open and to support Canadian families. We have done so in a way that is sustainable, that has preserved the lowest debt to GDP ratio of any G7 country and maintained a AAA credit rating. That is more than can be said for any plan the Conservatives have offered.
L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
Madame la Présidente, comme tout le monde.
Madam Speaker, like everyone in Quebec, the Bloc Québécois wants Bill 101 to apply to Workplaces under federal jurisdiction. The minister, when questioned, says she'll protect the right to work in French, but that's not what Bill 101 does. It doesn't protect the right to work in French. It makes French the language of work all throughout Quebec. Does the minister want to defend the right to work in French in Quebec? Will she defend French as the language of work, the official language of work in Quebec? The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. We recognize that there's a decline in French. We want to protect and promote the use of French not only outside of Quebec, but in Quebec as well. We will accept our responsibilities and make sure that businesses under our jurisdiction will contribute to protecting French as instituted by the Government of Quebec and Francophone communities. It is the language of work and the language of services in Quebec, as well as offering those services in areas where there's a strong French population. The Honourable Member. I'll ask the question because in the White Book announcing a language reform, the government doesn't say that they want French to be the language of work in Quebec. It will extend the Official Languages Act to all businesses under federal jurisdiction. It's not French they want to defend at work, it's bilingualism. But bilingualism is going so well that French is in decline in Quebec. Will the government let the Government of Quebec apply Bill 101 to federal workplaces? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Official Languages. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I mentioned, we recognize that there's a decline in the use of French. We want to promote and protect the language, not only outside of Quebec, but within Quebec as well. As expressed in our reform document in February, protecting and promoting French is a priority for our government. The federal government has already recognized that the situation of French in country is distinct and that the government has the responsibility to promote and to share the French language not only outside Quebec, but within it. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Madame la Présidente, Facebook vient de s'entendre.
Madam Speaker, Facebook just agreed with 14 media outlets to pay for journalistic content online. Fine. We can't be against it. It's a step in the right direction. But we don't want a piecemeal solution according to the will of web giants. The real issue is that the Minister of Heritage is dragging his feet and still hasn't introduced a bill to protect our news media. What's he waiting for? For our newsrooms to close? When will the Liberals stop pandering to web giants and finally stand up to them?
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canadian news publishers deliver essential information for the health and safety of our communities, and they should be fairly compensated for their work. It's important, and we are continuing to work, and we are committed to ensure a fair and well-remunerated system for our news publishers here in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Le Campus Saint-Jean, sous le campus francophone de l'Ouest.
Campus Saint-Jean is the only francophone campus in Alberta. The Liberal government promised $121 million for post-secondary education for linguistic minorities. $60 million has been promised for Ontario. And now they're asking Albertans, will the minister agree to support the Saint-Jean campus before it is too late?
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. I would also like to thank her for her exceptional work. Campus Saint-Jean will receive the necessary funding. For our government, there's no doubt that every post-secondary institution with a strong Francophone majority throughout Canada must be supported. The minister has been in contact with her provincial counterpart in Alberta. We're in solutions mode. We want to continue our involvement. That's why from the beginning of our mandate, the Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Madam Speaker, the Conservatives have raised concerns about Switch Health from the beginning. The Prime Minister said that he had asked his team to take a hard look at what's going on with this contract and the company, but the government has extended Switch Health's contract by up to $180 million before the Standing Committee on Health could even review the situation. Was the Prime Minister satisfied with this thorough review, or did he simply let Canadians down again?
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, we expect this company to fulfill its contract requirements. Officials have been working with Switch Health to address any problems and concerns. But, Madam Speaker, we will not sacrifice the safe and reliable testing at our borders for Canadians. And the Minister has also directed officials to look at alternatives for providing this service. We have added an additional provider. We will stop at nothing to ensure that this contract and the testing is fulfilled.
L'Honorable Député de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister repeatedly stated that he's committed to transparency, but he keeps covering up his mistakes. Nearly 5,000 tests weren't processed because of sample misidentification. And now, the Liberal government won't even show us the contract with Switch Health and is hiding behind the National Security Exemption Clause. Why is the Prime Minister refusing to take responsibility for his mistakes?
L'Honorable Ministre.
Madam Speaker, on the contrary, as I've said, we expect Switch Health to fulfill their contract requirements. Officials have worked with this company every step of the way to address any areas of concern. In addition to that, we've added additional providers. The Minister of Health is very seized with this file. We will ensure that our testing is safe, reliable, and that we can ensure all Canadians can count on it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Madame la Présidente, Switch Health est une entreprise uniquement en...
Switch Health is only an English-speaking company. It's caused many problems for Francophones, especially farmers and businesses that hired temporary foreign workers. None of the company's partner labs are located in Quebec, and tests done in Quebec are usually transported and analyzed in Ottawa. How can the government neglect French to this point for such an essential service?
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I've said in this House before that we expect the testing to be done in both official languages. We have worked with Switch Health on this file. They have doubled their French capabilities. However, even before that, Madam Speaker, we ensured to add an additional service provider to make sure that there is safe, reliable testing in both official languages. We continue to work with officials and Switch Health and look for additional service providers. We will stop at nothing to keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
The minister likes to use the word expect a whole lot in her answers, but what I've noticed is that this government refuses to hold them accountable. On to a different topic. The principle of net neutrality is that everyone's content online is treated the same way. It means no favoritism. The government used to respect this principle, but that's not true anymore. With Bill C-10, the government will boost some content and suppress other content, all based on arbitrary criteria. It's completely discriminatory. So will the minister stop trying to pick winners and losers and leave Canadians' online content alone?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, Bill C-10 is about having web giants like Netflix contribute to the creation of Canadian productions. It's about Canadian jobs and Canadian artists. Bill C-10 does not deal with internet service providers in any way. There is nothing in Bill C-10 that would allow or support in any way that internet service providers could block you from accessing a service like Skype or slow down a service like Netflix or YouTube in order to encourage you to buy a different streaming service.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
The minister once again tries to mislead the House and the Canadian public. This bill will, in fact, result in discrimination against some Canadians. It's clear the Liberals no longer advocate for net neutrality. They think discrimination is okay, so long as the government is the one doing it. Here's the thing. You can't lift one group of artists up by tearing another group of artists down, which is exactly what Bill C-10 is trying to do. The Heritage Minister is attempting to pick winners and losers. So will he change course, do the right thing, and scrap Bill C-10?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, the only obligations in Bill C-10 for social media companies are for the companies themselves, not individuals. And the proposed obligations for the companies are restricted to having them advise of their Canadian revenues, contribute a portion of those revenues to Canadian productions, and to make our creators discoverable. Nothing in the bill asks for social media companies to hide content. It's about requiring web giants who make money in our country to contribute to our Canadian shows, movies, and music. Why would we let web giants make money from Canadians and not contribute back?
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
A well-read answer. I really wish the individual who just answered would stop trying to mislead Canadians. The internet is an amazing tool that allows Canadian artists to explode in popularity around the world. With Bill C-10, the Liberals are attempting to build a wall around Canadian creators. The problem is, on average, 90% of their audience is from outside of Canada. So by creating a so-called protective wall around them, the Liberals are actually imprisoning them, thereby quashing their ability to succeed. So when will the minister stand up for all Canadian artists and scrap Bill C-10?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Bill C-10 is about modernizing the Broadcasting Act, which hasn't been updated in 30 years. That's before streaming services became a part of the way the Canadian found their shows, movies, and music, and it needed an update. And yet, from the very beginning, before it even went to committee, the Conservatives have vowed to block this law from going ahead. The Conservatives have been against web giants contributing to the creation of Canadian stories from the beginning. Why?
The Honourable, l'Honourable Député de Avignon, la Métis, Matane, Matapédia.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, yesterday, the Expert Committee on COVID-19 testing recommended that the government abandon hotel quarantines. Not for health reasons, but because the government's disastrous management makes it ineffective. That's a statement of failure, not a recommendation. The experts are right to say that it makes no sense to exempt people who cross land borders. They're right that it makes no sense for people to avoid the quarantine hotel if they can pay a fine. Rather than abandoning the program, could the government finally just manage it properly?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, we welcome the report from the COVID-19 Testing and Screening Expert Advisory Panel. These recommendations are going to be incredibly helpful as we move forward in adjusting measures. And one of the fastest ways to adjust restrictions, Madam Speaker, is for Canadians to continue to get vaccinated. Every step of the way, our process at the borders has been about adding layers of protection. Every single layer of that protection is an additional measure that's going to stop the spread and protect Canadian lives. We will stop at nothing to do so.
L'Honorable Député d'Avignon, la Métis, Matane, Matapédia.
Madame la Présidente, c'est la santé publique.
Madam Speaker, public health should be dictating the course of action. The problem's not the hotel quarantine program. It's federal incompetence in border management. As long as travel is not safe, the return of travelers has to be supervised. The public's been making sacrifices for 15 months. The federal government can't tell all these people that it's abandoning border security in the final stretch of the pandemic because of administrative bungling. When will it get its act together instead of abdicating its responsibilities? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, absolutely not. As I've just said, our approach has been about adding layers of protection to ensure that all Canadians are safe, and that is why we have some of the strictest border measures anywhere around the world. In fact, Madam Speaker, we know these requirements are working because air travel has reduced by 96% compared to pre-pandemic travel levels. Madam Speaker, as the situation evolves, we will absolutely take into account any science and evidence, but Madam Speaker, we are going to ensure that hard work made by Canadians is not sacrificed, and we will keep them safe.
The Honourable for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, many Canadians will remember the issue that sent 30,000 self-employed individuals into a panic last Christmas as they were told they were ineligible for benefits and had to reimburse the government. The CRA's failure to define income in the context of small business caused anxiety for millions, and in fact, many Canadians repaid benefits they were rightfully entitled to. Can the minister please tell the hardworking Canadians when they will get their benefits back?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When the pandemic hit, we quickly introduced the CERB, helping more than 8 million Canadians put food on the table and keep a roof over their head.
We know that this continues to be a difficult time for many. That is why we are allowing self-employed workers who applied for the CERB based on their gross income to keep their payments as long as they met all other eligibility requirements. For people who may still need to make a repayment, no one is required to do so at this time. As the Prime Minister said, we will work with Canadians who need to make repayments in a way that is flexible and understanding of their circumstances. There won't be penalties or interest for anyone who erred in good faith.
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bank of Canada has been warning us about housing prices being up over 30% during this pandemic, and we have massive job losses throughout the country. These increases cannot continue, Madam Speaker. We know that some families, represented by that side of the chamber, will be just fine. But what about average day Canadians? Families need to know how they can secure affordable housing and how this government will ensure that families don't lose with the massive interest rates increasing on the horizon and many mortgages across Canada coming up for renewal.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I take great exception to the honourable member's assertion that the families who may live in my community because of my partisan affiliation are somehow less deserving than the families that he represents. The reality is, when it came to this pandemic response, we were there for families no matter where they lived, no matter who their representatives were. Now, the issue of housing affordability is a very real one that we are watching very closely. We have worked with the Office for the Superintendent of Financial Institutions to monitor the situation and are looking at changes to the mortgage stress test to ensure things don't run amok. In addition, I direct them to the National Housing Strategy, which is looking at reducing homelessness and making sure that every Canadian can live in a home they can afford.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Madam Speaker, Ben Manzura, a permanent resident who is a senior IT manager from Toronto, had to file an access to information request about himself just to find out if he passed an online citizenship test back in December. He's not the only one. This is a prime example of a system that is ineffective and inefficient. Frankly, it's harming the mental health of immigrants and Canadians and also our nation's economy. Why does this minister continue delaying addressing this inefficient system, causing applicants more hardships?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Openness and transparency in government is essential, and our government takes the protection of Canadians' privacy very seriously. We've made progress in support of access to information and have backed that with investments that are strengthening our system. Our officials have proactively reached out to the Information Commission in order to address any questions they may have. And Madam Speaker, we're going to continue to ensure access, transparency, and ensure that all of the integrity and privacy that is part of our immigration system stays in place.
The honourable member for Yellowhead.
Madam Speaker, recently California and New York passed bills that target Canadian forest products. The bills these states passed are fundamentally flawed, will hurt trade, and condemn our forest industry, comparing us to much less sustainable forest industry product exporters, when in fact Canada has the most sustainable forest industry in the world. Madam Speaker, will the minister stand up for our forest industry, or will he let these states push us around like he does with our energy sector?
Hear, hear. The honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for that important question, and I just want to reiterate that I agree that Canada's forestry sector is important to our economy. It supports hundreds of thousands of good, well-paying jobs here in Canada. We will always vigorously defend their interests, and we look forward to continuing to work with the United States on this matter and ensure that the industry continues to stay vibrant. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Churchill, Kiwatanuk-Aski.
Madam Speaker, this week the Auditor General made clear what's obvious to First Nations in our region and the country. The government consistently fails them. First Nations began the pandemic with nowhere near enough personal protective equipment and struggled to catch up. When communities cried out repeatedly for more nurses, more than half of their requests were rejected. Whether it's on water, housing, or this pandemic, we're getting monthly condemnations from this Auditor General and monthly commitments from this government to do better. Where's the political will from the Liberals to act on the repeated neglect and deliver for First Nations?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and we would like to thank the Auditor General for her report. Our government shares the priority of ensuring Indigenous peoples have the resources and support they need to combat and prevent the spread of COVID-19. As part of our ongoing work, Indigenous Services Canada is continuing reviewing our practices to improve the efficiency and flexibility of providing surge crisis support. We are working hand in hand with Indigenous organizations and communities to receive real-time feedback, and we will seek to better our processes now and beyond COVID-19. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Courtenay Albany.
Madam Speaker, with limited international and domestic travelers, summer 2021 is going to be another devastating loss for tourism and hospitality businesses right across the country. The Liberals are cutting the wage subsidy and rent supports for these businesses just when they need them the most. Once again, this government is leaving workers in the tourism and hospitality sector behind. Will the minister commit today to extend the wage subsidy and rent support until at least spring 2021 to help these small businesses and their workers?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his legitimate concern for the small business operators in the tourism sector, which we know have been hit disproportionately by COVID-19. The first thing that these businesses want back is their customers, and we are working hard to deploy vaccines to ensure that we can have a sense of normalcy return as soon as possible. With respect to the wage subsidy, I'll point the honourable member to the fact that we have extended in the recent budget the wage subsidy and rent subsidy with the flexibility to do more if necessary, and we've implemented new funds to support Destination Canada and $500 million directly towards support for the tourism sector. We will be there for operators because our recovery depends on their participation in the economy.
The honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, the pandemic has impacted many Canadians, including young families. My constituents in Scarborough Agincourt have had to balance work with childcare alternatives and many higher expenses along the way. Can the minister please tell this House what our government is doing to support families with young children during this difficult time?
The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, I thank the member for Scarborough Agincourt for her important question. Families have financial challenges during this pandemic. That is why we announced a Canada Child Benefit top-up payment of up to $1,200 per child under the age of 6. Today, the first payment is being made, going directly into the pockets of parents, and will benefit 1.6 million families. The Canada Child Benefit helps 9 out of 10 families and has helped lift 435,000 children out of poverty. My message to families is clear. We will always be there to support you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are disturbed that 2 scientists at the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg may have been passing top-secret information to the communist regime in China. Both scientists were fired in January, but the Prime Minister won't tell us why. The scientists were given top-level security clearances by this Liberal government, and we know they ship deadly viruses like Ebola from Winnipeg to the virology lab in Wuhan, China. And it was Canada's security agency, CSIS, that expressed concern that initiated the scientists being fired. Will the Prime Minister protect our national security and stop providing top-level security clearances to scientists that report to the Chinese military?
The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, the scientists and researchers at the National Biology Lab play a vital role in Canada's response to COVID-19. We take threats to research security and intellectual property seriously. The NML is a secure facility. Everyone working and visiting the NML must undergo security screening and adhere to strict security protocols, procedures, and policies. We will never put the health and safety of Canadians at risk, and the employees in question are no longer with the Public Health Agency of Canada.
The honourable member for Bow River.
Madam Speaker, Heritage Department memos reveal that Bill C-10 has the potential to grant CRTC regulatory powers to affect online service, including sports streaming, news sites, podcasts, and apps. The Liberals are still pressing the bill to be passed, which will cause tech giants to pass down the tax increase cost to my Bow River constituents by 50% approximately. Why did the minister ignore his department officials and proceed to present this destructive bill that will pick winners and losers based on unknown criteria?
The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, once again, the Broadcasting Act hasn't been modernized in over 30 years. Bill C-10 is about bringing us that update, and it's an important update that will support Canadian jobs and Canadian creators. If the member would like to, he can continue to follow the debate and work with us to help our creators. But the Conservatives have been vowing to block this law from going ahead since before it even went to committee. This is about web giants contributing to our creators. Why won't they help us to make that happen?
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Merci, Madame la.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canadians were shocked to learn that two scientists at Canada's National Microbiology Lab may have been passing top-secret information to the communist Chinese regime. This is a serious breach of national security. Yet the Prime Minister is refusing to be transparent with Canadians about his failures and his failure to protect this country. Will the Prime Minister end all cooperation with the communist Chinese regime in Canadian labs and universities? The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, as I said before, everyone at the NML must go through or undergo security screening and adhere to strict security protocols, procedures, and policies. We take threats of research security and intellectual property incredibly seriously. That's why we have protocols in place. And Madam Speaker, these people are no longer with the Public Health Agency of Canada.
The honourable member South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 3 weeks ago, I asked the Heritage Minister why he removed the clause in Bill C-10 that exempted what Canadians post online from government regulation. The Minister's answer, I should read the bill. Patronizing remark aside, that same minister has since admitted that Canadians posting online with enough views will in fact be regulated. Madam Speaker, through you, which is it? Will Canadians be regulated online or not?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it is clearly stated in the bill that users are excluded from the Broadcasting Act. That is a specific exclusion within the bill. The Broadcasting Act modernization will apply to social media companies only and require them to report the revenues that they make in Canada, to contribute a portion of those to the creation of Canadian stories and music, and to make our creators more discoverable. That is important for Canadian jobs and Canadian creators. I hope that the Conservatives will choose to support us in that.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, seniors are angry that the federal government is dividing them into two classes by increasing the old age security only for those aged 75 and up. This week, the FEDUC, as well as Canada's Association for Retired People and the National Association of Federal Retirees, all denounced Ottawa's decision. Financial precarity can affect all seniors. In fact, misfortune does not discriminate by age. It's just the federal government that's doing so. Will the government abandon its discriminatory approach and finally increase pensions for all seniors? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Our government has delivered on its commitment to increase OAS old age security by 10% for all seniors aged 75 and up. We're helping address the pressures that are faced by more than 3.3 million seniors as they age by giving them more financial security later in life. Older seniors face increased care expenses and are at greater risk of running out of their savings. As seniors age, their health and home care costs rise. All the while, they are more likely to be unable to work, have disabilities, or be widowed. The OAS hike...
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, the House voted to increase employment insurance benefits to 50 weeks for people who are sick. But for that to come into effect, a royal recommendation is required. And the government is refusing this. 50 weeks is what it takes for people with unpredictable illnesses like cancer to really recover. The government's 26 weeks is half of what these most seriously ill patients need. Does the government realize that support is needed when people are most vulnerable and that they're abandoning people who are fighting for their health? The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, Canadians expect and deserve an EI system that is flexible and responsive to their needs. EI sickness benefits are an important support for Canadians who need to leave work because of illness or injury. Workers receiving important treatments or requiring a longer period to recover from an illness or injury sometimes face a stressful income gap before they are healthy enough to return to work. That's why Budget 2021 extends EI sickness benefits from 15 to 26 weeks, providing approximately 169,000 Canadians every year with additional time and flexibility to recover and return to work. There's more work to do, Madam Speaker, and we'll continue working so that EI is there for Canadians when they need it most.
The Honourable Member Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Madam Speaker, seniors have been coming to my office quite upset. The issue? They received the link for the census, but have no ability to go online. They're very capable of using computers, but have no home internet because they simply can't afford it. They can't make video calls to see their grandchildren because they've been unable to visit during COVID. They can't access free Wi-Fi because the places that offer it have been locked down. This isn't a luxury, it's basic connectivity, yet this Liberal government has done nothing to spur competition and make internet rates more.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, in the best of times, living without high-speed internet is difficult, but during COVID, particularly for our elders, it has been incredibly difficult. Our government's working and has been to connect Canadians to this essential service since taking office back in 2015. And I'd say, Madam Speaker, that tens of thousands of Canadians are already on their way to getting connected to this high-speed internet service because of the investments we made. We made 10 times more investments in broadband than all other governments combined, and we won't stop till...
The Honourable Member for Prince Albert.
Madam Speaker, many seniors in my riding have called to ask why they haven't received their census forms. They are concerned that they will not be counted. The City of Prince Albert is concerned because our municipal financing depends on an accurate count. Seniors who have called the Census Helpline have been unable to receive any help. Can the Minister explain to my riding why the forms are missing and what will be done to ensure that they are counted?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We understand that the census is incredibly important. Canadians have come to appreciate how important it is as well. But it's important for my friend to recognize that we are there to assist individual Canadians. The census provides valuable information. And also use the telephone to fill out the census as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, the government's decision to designate all plastic manufactured items as toxic is absurd. It's inconsistent with the government's own science assessment, and it threatens thousands of jobs. So, can the minister, with a straight face, tell the more than 100 employees at Pro Western Plastics in St. Albert that the health and food plastic products that they manufacture are akin to lead, mercury, and asbestos? Really?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I know the Honourable Member, perhaps like me, enjoys a soft drink or a beer which contains carbon dioxide, which is listed in the Toxic Substances. Canadians understand that toxic substances in the Environmental Protection Act has a specific meaning, and it can be done safely. Canadians also know that plastics pose a significant danger to the environment, pose a significant danger to our health when not used properly. And that's why Canadians want us to regulate it, and that's what we're going to do. It's unfortunate the Conservatives stand in favor of the plastics industry and what...
The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hundreds of women have told us about their need for daycare. The lack of daycare has a considerable impact on the wage gap between the genders. We know that it's women who have to stay home to take care of their children, and that limits their participation in the labor force. It also limits their access to education and professional training, as well as future financial resources. Can the Minister inform the House how Budget 2021 will help build a more inclusive Canadian economy, and how it will help these women who have been hit hard. The Honourable Minister. Thank you to my colleague for her defense of women's rights. This government is the only one to have a credible plan to help women get back to work. We are doing so by fighting COVID-19 with vaccines, by providing affordable universal daycare, by supporting women entrepreneurs, and by supporting victims of gender-based violence. Our government will continue to work with all feminists.
Sturgeon River Parkland.
Madam Speaker, released documents outline how this Liberal government is funding the PMPRB to combat a so-called disinformation campaign by opposition MPs and cystic fibrosis advocacy groups. These families are fighting for their sick children to access drugs that are readily available in most developed nations. Why is this Liberal government shamefully attacking the families of sick Canadian children instead of working to get them the life-saving drugs they need?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, that couldn't be further from the truth. Our government has committed to a national pharmacare program with the precise objective to ensure that Canadians no longer have to choose about putting food on their table or affording the prescription drugs that they need. I find the Conservatives questioning on this interesting, and so I wonder if they'll support a national pharmacare program so that we can ensure that all Canadians have access to the critical medicines that they need at an affordable price.
The honourable member for Chatham-Kent Leamington.
Madam Speaker, the upper amount of cannabis individuals are authorized to possess for medical purposes is almost impossible for an individual to consume personally, with the sourcing of this production given over to designated growers. According to law enforcement officials, these production licenses are often abused, with excess production illegally sold into the black market, traded in the U.S. for fentanyl, or even worse, traded for handguns, fueling our gang violence. When will the Minister of Health address the loopholes in these regulations, loopholes large enough to drive a U-Haul truck through delivering illegal black market?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Member for Peace River Westlock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For years, companies like MindGeek have published videos of sex trafficking, child exploitation, and sexual assault. Removing these videos after 24 hours like this government is proposing isn't good enough. By that time, it could have been viewed and downloaded millions of times, creating an endless nightmare for victims. Yesterday, I introduced the CEASE Act, which will require pornographic platforms to verify the age and consent of every individual in the video before it is published. Does the government support this approach to put the burden of responsibility on companies instead of on victims?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, we take the issue of exploitation and trafficking extremely seriously, and we've worked diligently to address this through provisions that currently exist in the Criminal Code and also through funding investments that we have made that are included in our most recent budget. That funding will assist in the prosecution of those who would exploit people, including trafficking, and that is funding that we are dedicated to promoting so that we can ensure that people are kept safe, particularly children who are sexually exploited.
The Honourable Member for Sydney Victoria.
Madam Speaker, 50 years ago today, on a tragic night in my riding, Sandy Seal, a young black man's life was taken, and a young Mi'kmaq named Donald Marshall Jr. spent 11 years in jail for a murder which he did not commit. The inquiry into these events later found that the criminal justice system failed Donald Marshall Jr. at virtually every turn. Can the Minister of Justice inform the House what steps have been taken by the government to address systemic racism in our justice system?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, first I'd like to thank the member from Sydney Victoria for his advocacy on this important issue. While we will never be able to fully right the wrongs since the wrongful arrest and imprisonment of Donald Marshall Jr., I'm proud to say that a lot has changed since then. We've taken significant action, including crucial steps toward the creation of an independent criminal case review commission to review potential wrongful convictions, and brought forth legislation to address the overrepresentation of Indigenous persons and Black Canadians in the justice system. There is more to do, and our government is committed to doing that work that will lead to a justice system and a country that is more just and more fair for all.
The honourable member for Cowichan, Malahat Langford.
Madam Speaker, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board invested $900 million in a private water scheme in Brazil, driving up the cost of the water utility for residents in Rio de Janeiro's most impoverished communities. Labor and human rights groups are fighting this move, calling it a violation of Brazil's national laws. 2 months ago, Liberals and Conservatives defeated my bill to bring more accountability to Canada Pension Plan investment policies. Clean water and sanitation are human rights. Why are the Liberals encouraging this unethical investment of our public money?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his sincere concern for our relationship abroad and the importance of protecting the environment and working with international partners to do so. However, I do want to point out that when it comes to the investment decisions of the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board that are designed to protect the retirement security of Canadians, those decisions are made entirely independently of the Government of Canada. It's important to maintain that space between the government and the Pension Plan Investment Board to ensure that there are not political decisions taken that could compromise the retirement security of Canadians.
The honourable member for Hastings, Lennox, Addington.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister speaks from both sides of his mouth when defending our rights and freedoms. Last year, he attended a public protest in Ottawa, a violation of Ontario's emergency measures, yet he also claims lockdown protesters spread COVID, as if COVID spreads only at rallies he doesn't like. He's affirmed the right of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters who were not ticketed by police, yet I, as a sitting MP, received 2 court summons for attending other peaceful outdoor protests. Can the government confirm the Prime Minister is in favour of all Canadians' right to peacefully protest, or just the causes he personally endorses?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it's unfortunate that the honourable member doesn't understand how to follow local public health rules, but they are in place, in fact, to keep Canadians safe and to stop the spread of COVID-19. And I recommend that if he continues to get summons, there is a problem with his interpretation of these public health measures. They are serious. They are put in place to keep Canadians safe, but a person's ability to peacefully protest has not changed. The measures are in place to keep Canadians safe by stopping the spread of COVID-19, and I recommend he take that seriously.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary has a point of order.
Yes, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, the honourable member opposite asked a question earlier about CERB repayment, and with your permission and the permission of the House, I would like to correct the record and my response. This was regarding the CERB repayment.
Yes, and I did call the member, the minister twice, or for a response, and I would just ask those who are participating virtually to ensure that they're ready to respond. Unless there was a technical issue, then that's a different story. But I will allow the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to respond, but I would also indicate that members should be ready to respond immediately so that it doesn't take away from other orders of the House. The Honourable...
Madam Speaker, I do apologize.
Just one moment, please. I believe I may have another point of order, or there's an issue with... is there a technical issue? The Honourable Député de Mégantic-Clérable.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Clérable, is there a point of order? Just a clarification. I'd like to know if the Parliamentary Secretary is asking an answer to a question to correct a statement. It's not quite clear what he's asking. So before you rule, I think you should understand what the member is asking.
Wanting to clarify in second.
One moment, please.
Asking the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary if he was looking at clarifying an answer that was provided or whether he wanted to respond to the question that was asked that wasn't responded to.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to clarify a response that I had given to a question regarding the repayment of CERB. I would like to just correct the record and provide an improved answer.
There isn't consent to do that at this point. I would ask the member to be able to clarify that. He can do it during debates in the House.
The honourable member, House Leader, would like to raise a point of order as well? No, Madam Speaker, that it's been clarified for me.
And the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Health, rises on the point of order.
Madam Speaker, thank you. There was a question directed to me, and unfortunately the mute button would not come off. So it was a technical question. I was prepared and ready to answer. I can do so now.
I will, I'm just going to give me one. Okay. One second. So I would need to ask if there is unanimous consent to allow the minister to respond to the question that was asked in the House.
It's on this.
The honourable
member for Kingston and the Islands.
I don't believe unanimous consent would be required in this situation. There has been precedent that has been set by the chair that if there's a technical issue that's been raised by a member, that they are allowed to respond or re-ask the question. So I think that I think you need to be careful about even asking for unanimous consent because the precedent has already been set that it's not required.
The honourable official opposition House Leader would also like to raise a point of order. The Parliament House Leader. We understand full well that sometimes there are technical issues, and we respect that, but I would remind you, Madam Speaker, that you don't have a technical issue in the House. The government has had the time necessary to identify somebody to speak on behalf of the government to respond to the question. Sometime a minister is asked directly a question, someone else responds, the government responds. Whoever speaks on behalf of the government. So the government House Leader had the opportunity to identify a different colleague. He decided not to do so. That's his right. So everybody has the opportunity to speak when it's time. I appreciate the interventions. Just a second, please. One moment, please. In the House, it has occurred on several occasions. I will grant the parliamentary secretary the opportunity to give an answer, and I would encourage everyone who wishes to ask or answer questions to ensure that they are prepared to, especially if they are speaking virtually, to be prepared to speak if there are technical issues. Obviously, this must be immediately raised. So I will give the answer to the question.
To the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we are committed to ensuring that individuals who require cannabis for medical purposes have reasonable access to it. But with that being said, Madam Speaker, that anyone who is authorized to produce cannabis for their own medical purposes must follow the law and operate within the local authorization as well. And it is illegal for these individuals to provide or sell cannabis to anyone else. Madam Speaker, we're continuing to move forward on this file. Consultation just ended, and we look forward to the results of that to make additional improvements to the cannabis file. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Following discussions among representatives of all the parties in the House, I do understand that there is agreement to observe a moment of silence.
House to rise and observe a minute of silence following the tragic discovery of the remains of 215 children at a former residential school in British Columbia. Thank you. The Honourable, I have a point of order. The Honourable Member for the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Heritage.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I hope you will find unanimous consent to adopt the following motion: that notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House, Bill C-5, an act to amend the Bills of Exchange Act, the Interpretation Act, and the Canada Labour Code, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, be disposed of as follows. A, the bill be deemed concurred in at the report stage, and B, when government order is called later today, the bill shall be considered at third reading, that a member of each recognized party and a member of the Green Party be recognized to speak for not more than 10 minutes each, following by 5 minutes for questions and comments, and at the conclusion of the time provided for debate or when no member rises to speak, whichever is earlier, the bill be deemed read a third time and passed.
All those opposed to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary moving the motion will please say nay. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. The motion carries. Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36, bracket 8A, I have the honor to table in both official languages the government's responses to 13 petitions. These returns will be tabled in an electronic format.
Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
Presenting reports from committees. The Honourable Member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honor to present in both official language the 6th report of the Standing Committee on